Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to VMI. I'm Colonel Dave Gray. I'm the director for the Center of Leadership and Ethics, and I'll be your master of ceremonies for the next 2 days. We've got an exciting program for you that's sure to stimulate some great thoughts. As always, we're going to begin our program with the posting of colors and the playing of our national anthem. So, ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
Colors, hold. Ready, post. Colors. Ready, cut. Present. Arms. Arms, left, face, forward, march, left, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, left, left, right, left, right.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce Virginia Military Institute Superintendent, General Benford P. III.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Virginia Military Institute and this, our 5th annual Leadership Conference. The theme this year, Honor in Service. We're fortunate indeed in having with us our principal speakers for the conference, a host of men and women whose extensive knowledge and their experience in these fields and in the classroom, I think, bring important insights into the topics that you will examine over the next 2 days. We're especially happy to welcome Dr. E. Scott Geller, president of Make a Difference, who will open the conference, Kathy Tisdale, who is president and CEO of Campfire Incorporated, who will be our keynote speaker this evening, Dr. Barry Asmuth, senior economist with the National Center for Policy Analysis, Mrs. Elizabeth Scaife, lead trainer on domestic minor sex trafficking for Shared Hope International, and Dr. Kimberly McCabe, Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences at Lynchburg College. In addition, I would like to recognize and welcome retired Brigadier General Rebecca S. Halstead, who is serving this academic year as VMI's leader in residence from 8 to 13 March, and who will lead an interesting discussion on the value of mentoring, along with General Tom Hill, former Commander-in-Chief of U.S. Southern Command, Thursday evening. I think you'll find that very interesting for those of you that like to stay over. This conference, with its theme, Honor and Service, focuses on the idea of humanitarian public service, which perhaps can be described as honorable service. The ideal is the servant leader who responds to the needs of our time, needs such as poverty, global health, and human rights. The theme is most appropriate as this year marks the 50th anniversary of the death of VMI alumnus Jonathan Daniels, VMI class of 1961, a civil rights activist who was killed saving a young African-American teenager's life during the Alabama voting rights struggle in 1965 that you've seen so much on television this week. His spirit and inspiring example of selfless and honorable service will be celebrated tomorrow in Cameron Hall as we close this conference with a presentation of the 4th Daniels 61 Humanitarian Award to civil rights leader, the Honorable John Lewis of Georgia's 5th Congressional District. These next 2 days will constitute what can be called a humanitarian conference, where speakers and panelists and you, the audience, will examine and discuss the ongoing needs for servant leaders ready to respond to the needs of our time. It is also appropriate for us to turn our attention to ways that schools, colleges, and universities can better prepare and inspire graduates to take up the work of honorable service. Of course, a firm foundation in leadership, values, honor, and ethics is central to the accomplishment of such duty. The needs of our time are large, and I think are growing day by day, and the need for commitment to a humanitarian cause perhaps has never been greater. So on behalf of the entire Institute community, I extend to all of you a warm welcome and best wishes for informative discussions and stimulation conversation. And I'll now call on Lieutenant Colonel Keith Klein, Associate Professor of Psychology here at VMI, who will introduce our conference opening speaker. Colonel Klein.
Thank you, General P. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Keith Klein, a faculty member in VMI's Psychology Department and the chair of the subcommittee that has been working with the Center for Leadership and Ethics staff in the planning of this conference. I'm extremely excited and honored to have the opportunity to introduce our opening speaker, Dr. Scott Geller, alumni distinguished professor and director of the Center for Applied Behavior Systems in the Department of Psychology at Virginia Tech, president of Make a Difference LLC, and author of Actively Caring for People, Cultivating a Culture of Compassion. Dr. Geller received his PhD from Southern Illinois University in 1969 and has been a member of the Virginia Tech faculty ever since. His work in the field of applied behavior analysis, addressing the development and evaluation of behavior change interventions to improve quality of life, resulted in Dr. Geller being named one of the most influential safety leaders of the past decade by Occupational Hazards magazine in 2008, and one of the 50 most influential environmental and health safety leaders by EHS Today in 2010. In 2011, I had the honor of presenting Dr. Geller with the Virginia Social Science Association Scholar Award in Psychology. In addition to being a prolific scholar, he has also received numerous awards for his teaching and mentoring. I can speak directly to the latter. One of the reasons why presenting Dr. Geller with the award in 2011 and introducing him as our opening speaker today are so special to me is that he is the teacher that has made the greatest difference in my life. In the early 90s, I was an undergraduate at Virginia Tech when I took Dr. Geller's introductory psychology course. Somehow, in an auditorium of 500 students, his outstanding teaching and contagious enthusiasm convinced me to change my major to psychology, and his genuine passion and compassion for people convinced me that he cared about me as an individual and empowered me to empower others. Immediately after changing my major, I engaged in research in Dr. Geller's Center for Applied Behavior Systems. My love of mentoring students can be traced back to my first experience as an undergraduate researcher in his lab. My own research interest started with a project that I completed in his Psychology of Learning course, and the desire to make a difference in the lives of others that led me to VMI began with his influence. So it is fitting that I have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Geller for his talk entitled 7 Life Lessons from Psychological Science, How to Bring Out the Best in Yourself and Others, because that is exactly what he has done for me. Dr. Geller.
Thank you. Well, I mean, that's why I've been a teacher for 50 years. I mean, by the way, I've been at Virginia Tech for 45 years, and I've studied psychology for 50 years. So I'm going to talk about psychology. How many have had a psychology class? Oh, yeah, so you'll be right with me. Now, I've been studying psychology for 50 years, counting 5 years in graduate school. So I'm going to share with you what I think are the 7 leadership, 7 life lessons. And if you get these lessons, then you're going to teach others these lessons. By the way, don't hear me as a teacher. Hear me as you, the teacher. Because I'm going to plant some seeds, and your challenge is to teach others what I teach you. Again, I've studied it, and I've changed over the years. I've changed my philosophy, and I've changed my way. This is all research-based. So I have my little, I'm looking for my, oh, here's the slide thing. So I'm going to, do you notice this says humanistic behaviorism, and in the program it says psychological science. So I want to share with you how many remember humanism from psychology? Humanism, and then you had the behaviorism over here. And they were separate schools of thought. They were separate. We had Carl Rogers, the humanist, and we had B.F. Skinner, the behaviorist, and I want to bring them together. I want to make behavioral science more useful and more appreciated by bringing in humanism. That's what I'm going to teach you. And if you learn these, you're going to share it with others. And by the way, I am talking about leadership. We have leaders and we have managers. Managers can be leaders. What does a leader do? A leader inspires people to be self-motivated. Managers hold us accountable, and I need somebody to hold me accountable at times. I really do. But sometimes we want to be self-motivated. Bringing out the best in people is helping people become self-directed. And that's what humanistic behaviorism can do. Okay, let's check it out. These are my 2 heroes. This is how, by the way, this is B.F. Skinner, and I was a behavioral scientist for years. As Keith remembers, when he was my student, it was behaviorism, man. It was behaviorism. And I'm still a behaviorist. I still believe in the principles of behavioral science. But in 1990, I went to a seminar, 4-day seminar, by the man on the right. You know that guy? W. Edwards Deming. He was a humanist. And he's the guy who was responsible for turning things around in Japan in the 50s. When I was a kid, made in Japan was cheap, believe it or not. The youth here, it was cheap. It was toys. And in the 50s, we didn't listen to the humanistic principles that W. Edwards Deming was teaching, so Dr. Deming went to Japan. And he's responsible for turning things around. I'm going to talk about that. So let's look at some quotes from our behavioral scientists. One can picture a good life by analyzing one's feelings, but one can achieve it only by arranging environmental contingencies. That's his legacy. Selection by consequences. And it's a legacy that most motivational speakers worldwide do not get. They think that you can be the best you can be by telling yourself you're the greatest. They think it's antecedent conditions that get us to do the best. Let me tell you, yeah, you can turn yourself on, you can activate yourself, you can say you're the greatest, but if you don't get consequences for your behavior, we call it extinction, you'll stop the behavior. So we have to learn that, leaders. Immediate consequences outweigh delayed consequences. So we're more likely to do things for the immediate consequences, the party, the good food, the good tasting food, rather than food that's necessarily good for you. So that's a principle. Consequences for the individual usually outweigh consequences for others. Now we're talking about service here. We're talking about servant leadership. And Skinner said that to save the world from itself, we're going to have to get beyond that. Paul Chance wrote an article that says, to save the world, we have to prove Skinner wrong. And I'm telling you right now, not true. Not true. I have to convince you in the next 40 minutes that helping others is rewarding. If we could just get people to realize that when you serve others, it feels good. That's the principle. So this is not wrong, but some of us are misled in thinking it's these extrinsic things like food and stuff, like the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, satisfying my basic needs. But you rise to the top, and there's other kinds of needs we satisfy by feeling self-motivated. Moving on. W. Edwards Deming, don't blame people for problems created by the system. Sometimes we blame people. Sometimes we say, this student in my class doesn't get it. Well, teacher, maybe you didn't teach. Maybe you didn't set up the conditions for the individual to get it. So sometimes we have to understand the system. You can't measure everything. Wow, I heard that you can't manage, you can't measure, you can't manage what you can't measure. Deming says you can't measure everything. Sometimes you just do it because it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to teach you some basic things that are the right things to do, but you can't necessarily count on measuring it. A numerical goal without a method is nonsense. Deming would say over and over, goal without method, what could be worse? So how often do we set a goal without teaching people the method to get there? Without convincing people, here's a word, without empowering people. I'm going to teach you what empowerment really means from a psychological perspective. Ranking people, teams, or divisions induces conflict, destroys morale, and prevents optimization. Deming taught me interdependency. I was raised to be independent. You know, as a kid, you're dependent on people to take care of you. Then you can't wait to become a teenager. Independent. That's how it was. Nice guys finish last. Got to blow your own horn. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. You know, that's how I was raised. Deming taught another philosophy. We need each other. Interdependent is the mature person, the mature organization, the mature system to realize that we're all in this together, folks. And we have to realize all of us have different talents, have different interests. Together, we make a difference. All right, 7 lessons. Here's the first one. You all know this one. We talk about this all the time. It's amazing how we don't follow this simple lesson. Employ the power of positive consequences. Notice how this lesson does not work in the real world. The most efficient way to improve both behavior and attitude simultaneously. If you use a negative consequence to improve behavior, you might get behavior change, but attitude could go south. Positive consequences should be soon, frequent, and behavior-based. That's basic, but check this out. What is this strange and beautiful feeling inside of me? Waves of ecstasy pulsing through my soul. This is why I only give positive reinforcement once a year. And the fact that you can relate to this and you see it, you realize this is the way we do behave. Alice, here's a bonus for your good work. On what? I can't be specific because then you might do it again and expect another bonus. Congratulations, you've motivated me to act randomly. I'm going over here, but I don't know why. I try not to let it bother me, but I just can't help it. I've never been chosen Employee of the Month. Employee of the Month, it's Employee of the Moment. Moment by moment, when you see people doing the right thing, you have to thank them. Back at our university, I think it's probably different at VMI. You guys are probably better, but back at Virginia Tech, cars stop at the pedestrian crosswalk to let students cross. How many students do you think thank that car, turn and thank the driver for stopping? 0. They're in their own little entitlement world going up. You're probably much better here at VMI because you people understand that we care and we reach out and we thank people. It's Employee of the Moment. And Ted gets a Singular Achievement Award for creating the We Are They teams. It's a check for $1,000. Let's give Ted a hand. These things never work out the way you want them. How often do we set it up so there's one winner and 600 losers? When we got married 20 years ago, I said, I love you. If anything changed, I'll let you know. That's our world. Be aware of the behavior you're reinforcing. Okay, now will you please stop crying? I want a pony. I wanted a pony. Sometimes we reward the wrong behavior. Of course, you all know that. Reward effort, not ability. Carol Dweck has done years of research demonstrating the fact that watch how you label people. If you label people, you're brilliant, you're a natural performer, you've just given them an excuse not to work so hard. And you've also given them a reason to not take on challenges for fear that they might lose that label. Perfect routine, Susie, you're a natural. Awesome, now I don't have to practice. So we need to reward effort, not ability. Watch the labels we give people, folks. In fact, watch the label you give yourself. Don't say you're the greatest. Say you work hard. You try hard. You're motivated. Positive consequences promote success seeking. Negative consequences promote failure avoiding. This is so important. In my class of 600 students, when Keith was there, I had 400. Now I have 600. First day of class, I ask, how many are here to avoid failure? 80% raise their hand. And I say, well, I'm glad you're here. But if you're here to avoid failure, you're not a happy camper. You probably told your friends, I got to go to class. Not I get to go to class. And it's your attitude. It's how you see it, folks. I bet you woke up to an alarm clock, not an opportunity clock. It's how you see it. So I want success seekers. And how you communicate to people and how you communicate to yourself will determine whether you're a failure avoider or a success seeker. Check out this diagram. Where are you? And you might say, well, it depends. And it does depend. In some situations, I'm a success seeker. Those are the optimists. Those are the ones who go beyond the call of duty. Leaders, it's your challenge to put them up in that upper right-hand box, not down here. Notice how close a failure avoider is to a failure acceptor. Oh, I guess I'm just not going to make it. I'm just not good enough. Ready, get set. Will he run? He'll run. I've been working with coaches, and coaches, this is the mindset of most athletic coaches. Why? Because that's what their coaches did to them when they were an athlete. I've talked to many students who dropped out of a sport because they had a coach that thought the way you motivate behavior is through negative reinforcement. It's always sit, stay, heal, never think innovator, be yourself. Now watch how these mice significantly increase their information processing, decision making, and goal-directed behavior. See, that's the deal. Will they change their behavior? Absolutely. See, so punishment seems to work. It's efficient. We heard you remove the label. When I was a kid, this label, do not remove under penalty of the law. I mean, we are a click it or ticket nation. And I'm not saying that's bad, but we could do better with some positive consequences. But the sign says only shirt and shoes required. B.F. Skinner called that counter control. Sometimes when we think the world is just telling us what to do, we're just following someone's orders, we will want to feel free. Jack Brem called it psychological reactance. We react and do the opposite or try to beat the system. Why? Because I like to feel in control. That's about self-motivation. I want to be in control. Some consequences reflect self-direction. This is the big one. I mean, sometimes we can give people a consequence and they could feel self-directed, self-motivated. I'm going to get more into that as we move on through this lecture, but let me just show you some consequences are natural. Some things you get a consequence as part of the job, and it's natural. That's correct, Billy, but you don't win a prize this time. What did the teacher goof? The teacher goofed up by not explaining to Billy, Billy, you solved the problem. Bring the consequence close to the task and help people believe that what they're doing is important. When people believe they're competent at doing worthwhile work, they're more likely to be self-motivated. Ed Deci, Richard Ryan, solid research that says if people believe that good at something, so how do you let people believe they're good at something? Positive consequences. What are you two doing? I'm laying block. I'm on a team building a community center. They're doing the same job, but it's how you define the job. And you help people see, these guys, he's laid more bricks, he's happier. Life lesson number 2. We learn so much by watching other people, don't we? Observational learning. Well, where'd you learn to drive so fast, young lady? I mean, we watch others and we learn. Jeffrey, what are you doing? I'm driving like Daddy. We watch others. How about this one? Here's another dog story. This dog has a problem. So what we're going to do, observational learning. We're going to show the dog. Look, it works, doesn't it? Look at the dog now. I got a poem. The eye's a better teacher and more willing than the ear. Fine counsel is confusing, but example's always clear. And the best of all the preachers are the ones who live their creed. For to see the good in action is what everybody needs. I can soon learn how to do it if you let me see it done. I can watch your hands in action, though your tongue too fast may run. And the lectures you deliver may be very wise and true. For I may not understand you, and the high advice you give. There's no misunderstanding how you act and how you live. How many buy that? Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you give me, I believe in observation. Come on, don't put it down. Participate. Thumb up. Come on, thumbs up. I want to see it all around. Thumbs up. Take that thumb, put it on your chin. Some of you went right here. Others went, this is your cheek. So I demonstrated quickly that sometimes we do what other people do. All right, I want to talk about feedback. That's lesson, I better back up and say it. Give and receive behavioral feedback. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanence. Only with feedback can we improve. And it needs to be behavioral feedback, not ability feedback. Make feedback sincere, specific, soon, and significant. By the way, I have a paper on this, and I have a handout on this. If you'd like, I can email it to somebody. You can distribute it if you want. But I do appreciate, there's been research, by the way, that says that when people take notes, not on the computer, but by hand, they learn better. I have so many of my students with their computers in class, and research has shown that you learn more when you have it in your hand and you're writing it. Okay. Specify the desired behavior. Obviously, when you give feedback, specify the behavior. At least I know you're not cheating. That's not what I mean. What's the behavior? Bonnie, we're getting some feedback way up here. Nope, too late. Give more supportive than corrective feedback. Now we're back to lesson number 1, aren't we? Give more supportive than corrective, but our world isn't that way. Hey, what'd your supervisor say? I mean, that's the way the world works. And leaders, servant leaders, we have to turn that around. If someone said to you, I'd like to give you some feedback, can you come to my office at the end of the day? Has that person ruined your day? You expect feedback to be negative? It has a connotation of being negative. Isn't that sad? Because it takes feedback to improve, and it's supportive feedback. But here's the deal. All of us, maintain humility to accept corrective feedback. Sometimes we resist other people telling us what to do. We resist it. I don't want to hear it. We pretend we didn't hear it. Become a behavior-based feedback coach. Servant leaders, here's your deal. I want you to remember what the letters of coach mean. Whether you're an athletic coach or a teacher or a parent, we coach each other. The C is care. Know that I care, and you'll care what I know. I care so much, I'm willing to observe you and give you some feedback. But while I'm observing you, remember Deming, the system, I'm analyzing. What factors in the system, in the environment, might be influencing that behavior, particularly focusing on consequences. Skinner. Then I communicate. And when I communicate, I'm a humanist. It's non-directive. I don't tell people what to do. I ask more questions, leaders. Ask more questions and get them to tell you what they should have done. Then they will own it. If you do it right, you'll help. I love, that's the best acronym I ever came up with in my life, because it's the order in which it happens. Care, observe, analyze, communicate, and help. Lesson 4. We all heard the golden rule, right? Well, my teacher in 3rd grade knew about the golden rule. And in front of the whole class, she recognized me for doing a good job on my homework assignment. And then the kids beat me up on the playground. I did not want public recognition. Oh, but you heard that thing. Recognize publicly, reprimand privately. We have to understand it. And she was treating me the way she wanted to be treated. She wasn't treating me the way I wanted to be treated. Treat people the way they want to be treated. However, there are exceptions. Sometimes people don't know what's good for them. If we treated people the way they wanted to be treated all the time, we would not have safety belts in cars. Notice I said safety belt. It's not a seat belt, it's a safety belt. We wouldn't have speed limits. So sometimes we have to restrict. And how do we know what other people want? How do we know how to treat people? We can't without empathy. Empathy means trying to put yourself in the other person's position. That's humanism. This is my wife and a student. My dog he was a rescued animal, and he had to get his things fixed, and they wore that cone. So they wanted to have empathy with the dog, so they put the cone on and wore it all day to understand how the dog must feel with that cone around his head. Anyway, that's empathy, trying to see it the way they see it. Empathy requires an emotional connection, something we miss most of the time with our current communication. What do you mean I'm disconnected and out of touch? I have email, a smartphone, text messaging, Facebook, and Twitter. And you're still out of touch because you're not connecting with people from an emotional perspective. Empathic listening is special and rare. Let's talk about listening. There are 5 levels we ignore. That's the bottom level. Press 1 to be ignored, press 2 to be ignored longer. We ignore. 2nd level, we pretend. Sometimes we nod our head, yeah, I get it, but you're not really. You're thinking about what you're going to say next rather than really listening to what the other person is saying. And most of us, most of the time, it's selective. We hear we hear stuff we want to hear. No, honey, not I saw at a table. It's I have seen a table. She's not seen it the way Johnny saw it. Ha-ha, Biff, guess what? After we go to the drugstore and the post office, I'm going to the vet's to get tutored. Nope, he didn't hear it right. Better than that is attentive. That's when you try to put aside your biases and be humble and hear it all. But the top is empathic. That's when you try to hear it from the other person's perspective. I want to tell you how I learned about empathy. When I started, I was a young professor at Virginia Tech in 1974. We used Blue Books. You don't probably use Blue Books anymore, do you? Do you? Fantastic. I went to the College of Worcester, and everything was in Blue Books. I learned how to write. So I thought I'd use the Blue Book in my class of 400. So they're writing in these blue books. This was the third exam. The class starts at 10 o'clock. It goes 50 minutes, 10 to 11. So they're all writing in their blue books. By the way, I don't use these now. Are you kidding? I realized I can't read 400 times 4, 1,600 blue books. Students said, what's my grade, professor? What's what? I don't know, I'm still reading. Now they want efficient, you know? So we have computer grading, multiple guess tests. Oh, they're so silly, multiple guess. This is when you have to really express yourself. Better than this would be an interview. So they're filling out the blue book. The class is over. It's 10 to 11. I clap my hands. All right, class, exam over. Bring your blue books forward. And 400 students came to the front, and they put their blue book on the stage, except one dude in the back. He continued to write in his blue book. Do I have his picture here? Yeah, he's writing in his blue book. I see him in the back writing in his blue book. I'm saying to myself, cheater. I'm talking to myself. There's a cheater for you. See, I'm developing what psychologists call premature cognitive commitment. I'm making a judgment about someone without knowing what's really going on. So now the students have left. It's now 11 o'clock, and I'm beginning to collect the blue books. And he comes running forward. Professor Geller, don't forget my blue book. I looked him square in the eyes, and I said, keep it, son. You gotta have a picture. He said, what? I said, son, you cheated. This is not the first exam, it's the third exam. You know my rule. It's a cardinal rule. When I say the exam is over, it's got to be over. I can't take your blue book. Besides, I bet you're working to avoid failure. You're not a success seeker. You're a failure avoider. And he said, I'm not sure I know what you mean, but my mother will kill me if I flunk psychology. That's exactly what I mean. You're not here for your mom. You're here for you, to gain, to learn, to move forward, not to avoid. And then he said, well, sir, what if I just erased everything I wrote in the last 10 minutes? Wouldn't that be fair? And I said, yeah, it'd be fair if I trusted you. But I don't trust you. You know, try to beat the system once, you'll try to beat the system again. I can't take your blue book. Oh man, he was down. He took his blue book and he started to walk out of the classroom. He got 30 feet from me, and he turned on his heels, and he went up and he said, sir, do you know who I am? Now that caught me off guard. No. 400 students? I don't know who you are, and I don't rightly care. Good. Took his blue book, stuffed it in the pile with all the rest, ran in the back of the classroom. How many have heard that before? Heard a story like that? It's been all over the internet. Johnny Carson, he's the one that preceded Jay Leno, you know, and then we have Jimmy Fallon. But Johnny Carson talked about this professor. Didn't mention my name. But about this professor. Told the story. It's been on the internet. There was a movie called The Slackers, and they tried to recreate the story, but I'm here to tell you that's not the whole story. I'm telling you the whole story. He's running out of the classroom thinking he beat the system. I got his blue book. I mean, come on, I was young and quick in those days, and I had good eyesight. I saw what he was doing. I got his blue book. I got him. He thinks he beat the system. I know who he is. What would you do? What would you do? What should I have done? How many would flunk him? Well, we got a few hands. Thanks for your courage. You know, because the rest, what are the rest? What would you do? The kid had an extra 10 minutes. What would you do? I couldn't wait to flunk him. Couldn't wait. I had this vision. In those days, we didn't have computers. I had this vision of going to my office, pulling out the desk, finding his name, and putting a big F for exam number 3. On my way back to my office, however, it came to me. Maybe it came to you also. I had no empathy. It was my way or the highway. That conversation, my way. I didn't understand where he was coming from. Is it possible that he did not hear that the exam was over? That he was so engaged in filling out the blue book that he didn't know to stop writing? Is that possible? But it's not probable. There's 400 students going forward. He knew it was over. I think he took a calculated risk. What was the calculation? What were his intentions? It takes intentions, not behavior alone. What was the kid's intentions? Is it possible that he was saying to himself, I got so much to show the professor. He'll love this stuff. He'll be there anyway. So I'm well-intentioned. And besides, as I recall, he was boldly writing. He wasn't sneaky. He didn't write it on his hand. He was right there. So maybe he didn't think he was cheating. Is that possible? And the problem is, I didn't take the time to try to know. I was not empathic. I was top-down, directive. I was not humanistic. He got a B+ in that exam. The next day was the final exam. He was the first one to hand it in. He got feedback. And you know what? He majored in psychology. He majored in psychology. Is it possible that if I had flunked him that day, from his perspective, completely unfair, that he would have done something completely different than psychology? Become an engineer, make a lot of money. The point is, it can take one communication, one supervisor, one parent, one coach to turn a person off to whatever they were doing. Okay. Lesson 6, customize consequences for self-direction. See, this is key. We're moving up to a key point. Activate behavior with empowerment. You know, have you ever heard that term, I empower you, meaning I give you more to do with fewer resources? In psychology, it's about feeling empowered. How do you know if someone feels empowered? 3 beliefs. I can do it. Albert Bandura calls it self-efficacy. I give you this assignment. I've had the training and the resources and the time to do it. That's a training question. Now I have an education question. Will it work? Albert Bandura called it response efficacy. Do you believe that what we're asking you to do will work? That takes education. So is there a difference between training and education? Would you rather have sex education or sex training? Do you want your kids to have sex training or sex education? You know the difference. Training, you do the behavior. You want an oxymoron? Online training. Online training. That's like plastic silverware, jumbo shrimp, legal brief, country music. Oh, yeah, right. This is America. We like country music. All right. Now I have a motivational question. If you want a person to feel empowered, they have to believe they can do it. They have to believe it will work, leaders. And I have to believe it's worth it. That's the consequence question. You have to share with people, what will we get as an individual, as a group? What are the consequences? Never mind why, just go fetch. How often do we tell people what to do without talking about the rationale? Empowerment requires training and education. Empowered people believe the outcome is worth the effort. Empowerment activates goal commitment. Oh, this is big. Talk about commitment. What about goals? SMART's goals are empowering. Check it out. Probably all seen this, except I got a little different. S, yeah, we all know that's specific. M, you think that's measurable? No, M is motivational. That's empowering goals mean motivational. It's worth it. They're also achievable, means I can do it. They're also relevant, means it will work. And I don't need measurable because if I can track it, I can know my progress. I add an S because it's important to share your goal, because then you'll get support from others, hopefully, to maintain your behavior. Behavior is fueled by consequences. Check it out. This diagram is so important, folks. You got a vision? I got my vision. And given that vision, now I set my goals and I feel empowered with regard to those goals. And I do behavior. But guess what? If you don't get consequences to support the behavior, you'll only go so far. And now we're back to lesson number 1, consequences. By the way, consequences work. Next time you go out to eat, put a little sign on your table that says you're tipped so far and put a few dollar bills under there. You will get more attention that day, that evening, ever. What's this? Well, the better you do, we get more. I don't just give 20% or 10%. Depends on your behavior. And of course, if you're not doing so well, I take some dollars away. That whole restaurant will know about you, and you'll have more than one server coming to your table. Guaranteed. Why aren't you wearing your safety glasses? I didn't see you coming. Some behavior is other-directed. Not that that's a bad thing. We need managers. I mentioned that earlier. Managers hold us accountable. Other-directed. But leaders help us to be self-directed. Some consequences inspire self-direction. Will he put on his hard hat? Well, there's no one to hold him accountable. He needs to be self-motivated. Self-directed behavior reflects self-motivation. How do we increase self-motivation? Well, I've got 10 minutes to get this. Perceptions of choice, competence, and community. Get this. If you perceive choice in what you're doing, I'm not just doing it because so-and-so told me to do. I have some choice. The leader who says, I expect you to get this done, rather than I tell you to get this done. Or, here's what we want. But how you do it, you're the expert. You can figure it out. Choice. Man, do we have this guy controlled. Every time we pull the lever, he gives us a food pellet. We're all in it. It's reciprocal. People are influencing each other. I'm very much influenced right now by the clock back there because I realize I have to stop at 10:25. So I am controlled. Competence. Better hold back positive attention. Bobby's getting a big head. Community. I'd share my practice with you, but I'm afraid I'd create a cycle of interdependency. Yes, that's what we want. Interdependency. Some consequences fuel self-motivation. There's the key. By the way, I do have anybody seen my TEDx talk? I was told I shouldn't bring my drum today because you might have seen my TEDx talk. If you Google my name, Scott Geller, then put TEDx, and you can see a 10-minute speech related to what I talked about here today, but much different, but it's a review. 7, customize consequences with a hierarchy of needs. How many remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Oh, yeah. What's at the top? Oh, good for you. Let's check it out. Higher needs reflect self-motivation. If you satisfy a higher need on that hierarchy, you will inspire self-motivation. Think about it. At the bottom, we got physiological needs. That's, I need food, I need a place to stay, I need sleep. I need sleep. Safety and security needs. Now you rise up. Oh, social needs, social acceptance. And then we get self-esteem needs. Anything that you give a person that allows them to feel better about themselves, self-motivation. And then we have self-actualization. Is that the top? No, it's not. It's amazing that we still teach that. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow died in 1970, and his last book was called Beyond Human Nature. And the top, the highest need is not about self. Notice, all that is self. I want a selfie. How about a helpie? It's all about self-actualization. By the way, I asked my professor, what is self-actualization? He said, sir, self-actualization, he said, Scott, actually my professor, self-actualization is when you believe you accomplished it all. You've met your goals in life, and you can really relax and say, I did it. And then he said, Geller, I don't think you'll ever get there. And he was right. I'll never think that I did all I wanted to do, but it doesn't matter because you can reach the top. You can reach the top. back up. He called it self-transcendence. I call it actively caring for people. Y'all got a wristband. Join our movement, the Actively Caring for People movement, leaders. We need people. By the way, don't you know when you reach this top and you reach out and you help somebody else, it influences your self-esteem. It could affect your social acceptance. It could even affect your self-actualization. So you go to the top without satisfying all these needs. Mother Teresa didn't. She was up here. Gandhi was up here. AC4 behavior is fueled by a win-win, interdependent mindset. Son, it's not whether you win or lose unless you want daddy's love. That's our culture. That's our culture. This is our culture. Can't we work together? Can't we change from independent win-lose to win-win? Leaders, you can help them make that happen. So I'm so honored to be here, to plant some seeds to one of the best cultures, best college, university cultures around, man. You folks will get it, and you'll spread it to others. And it happens in workplace, too. AC4 behavior is sustained by positive consequences, okay? Positive consequences. There you go. That's the wristband. Let me explain how the wristband works. By the way, there's Phil Zimbardo wearing a wristband. Some of you know that guy from psychology. And there's Marty Seligman. He started an area of psychology called positive psychology. He's wearing a wristband. There's Michelle Obama getting a wristband from our Vice President of Student Affairs at Virginia Tech a few years ago. She gave the commencement address, and she talked about Justin Graves. Justin Graves has committed himself to helping at least one person every single day. As he put it, life is all about what you have done for other people. That's what it's about. And there's our Hokey Bird wearing a wristband. There's a cadet. He's out of uniform. He's got a wristband on. I caught, that was on the front page of our campus newspaper. He didn't pose for that, but we're changing a culture. Those wristbands are all over the place, and we're saying, what's that? Well, don't you know? I've joined a movement. This is worldwide. If you look on your wristband, it has a number. Every wristband has a different number. There's my group at the university pushing, actively caring for people. Let me tell you a quick story about Allie Neal. One of my students was talking about our Actively Caring for People movement at LSU at a leadership conference, much like this one. And Allie Neal says, let me tell you a story. I'm riding the metro in Washington, D.C., and the guy across from me looked so unhappy. His head was down, and I said, are you okay? That's all I said. I said, are you okay? And he said, no. And he proceeded to tell her why he was not okay. I've had the worst day of my life. And she listened with empathy. She even teared up, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you have a better day. My stop is coming up, so I'm going to have to leave. And he said, please. And he took a green wristband off his wrist. He was in Washington on the metro. This makes me emotional, actually. And he said, I want you to have this. It says, actively caring for people. And you've just cared for me more than anyone else for the whole year because you listened to my story. Where did he get that? Where did he get the wristband? We don't know. We'll never know. But now we will. That's when my students said every wristband has to have its own ID number. So your wristband has its own ID number. We have a website, ac4p.org. Give that right now. I would love for you. Go to the website. I got this wristband from Dr. Scott Geller, or from Scott Geller, because I listened for 15 minutes to him rant and rave about AC4P. And that'll go to your Facebook. You'll be spreading positive gossip. We hear so much negative. We want positive gossip. Every wristband is colored. And there's, see somebody, act. Give them the wristband. Tell them to pass it on. By the way, don't keep this wristband. Wear it. Join the movement. But if you see somebody else worthy of getting the wristband, get them to join the movement. Pass it on. By the way, on our website, we sell wristbands, and all the money goes to the AC4P, Actively Caring for People Foundation. Those are just some stories. It's traveling worldwide. I have a book, and later this afternoon you can see a copy, and I've given a few of them away, and that's the book. We also have a book for schools. This is my final slide. Check it out. Notice he's wearing a wristband. This is so much about our conference, isn't it? In this era of social transition, the greatest tragedy is not the blaring noisiness of the so-called bad people. It's the appalling silence of the so-called good people. Isn't that what it's about, folks? Speaking up. Remember those 7 principles? I got one final poem to end up. Tiger met a lion while drinking by the pool. Said the tiger to the lion, "Why you roar like such a fool?" "Roaring's not so foolish," said the lion with a twinkle in his eyes. "They call me the king of beasts, and it pays to advertise." A rabbit overheard the lion, and he ran home like a streak. He thought he'd try the lion's trick, but his roar was just a squeak. So a hungry fox had his lunch in the woods. The moral of the story is, it does not pay to advertise unless you've got the goods. That's why you're here. Cadets, that's why you're here. You're learning the goods. Now your challenge, leaders, is to spread them. Be here for 2 days and learn. Continuously learn. But then, leaders, teach others. Inspire others, as well as yourself, to be self-motivated. Thank you very much.
Dr. Geller, it's time to apply, if I've actively listened, life lesson number 3, provide positive feedback. So on behalf of the superintendent and the Corps of Cadets, please accept this small token of appreciation. And as a consequence, ladies and gentlemen, let's give the good doctor a great